Hey, what is going on, all my fellow godlies and Warframe enthusiasts around the world? I'm Vance from the Warframe God Build series, and yeah, I know I said I was gonna step away from the series, but I also announced before the Mirage God Build on the Facebook fan page that I was gonna go ahead and do an Ember ReForged. So, not to advertise for a fan page or anything, but if you're a fan of me and you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing, then Facebook fan page is definitely the place to be. Anyways, getting on to the topic at hand. Before I really cover the nits and grits behind Ember, I just want to clarify that I still wholeheartedly believe that the absolute best way to build for Ember is the way that we did in God Build's Ember. I mean, it's not rocket science, people. She really needs a buff. She's squishy, and her offense will eventually wear off. But I have acknowledged the fact that a lot of people really wanted to see a damage build in the comments section. Thus, this Reforged video isn't necessarily an update, it's kind of like an alternative build for everyone who's craving damage. But I just gotta show you this little neat exploit with Ember. Alright, so the biggest issues with building this way for Ember is the fact that it is going to piss through energy. Even with a maxed out generic lens, you are just going to run your energy well dry before you can do really anything. It just goes so quickly. Even with your efficiency at a decent rate, it goes still pretty quickly. So, in building this way, you also kind of have to include some method to keep you safe while you recharge your energy. And in those situations where you have an Ignis that is leeching you and you can't get away from them, well, I'm sorry to say you're pretty screwed. Especially if you're relying on a sentinel such as Shade to cloak you while you get your energy back up and your sentinel dies, unfortunately. Yeah, you're screwed. Which is ultimately why I recommend the first God build for Ember first and foremost, because this build is gonna sorely lack. Now, the neat thing about it is that because of flash accelerant, you can boost your dot damage with dot weapons. This makes our secondary just overpowered as all hell. But the issue with Ember is, like I said in the God builds for it, there should be a method to mitigate damage. There should be some type of deal that burns munitions out of the air. That way you can, avoid getting hit rather than just having to rely on Firequake. Essentially, the only reason why you bring Firequake is because you need to knock your enemies down. You need to keep them down so they can't shoot you. That's the only way Ember can survive in late game. But that's going to be a huge problem because eventually Firequake doesn't keep them knocked down. I have seen that 9 times out of 10 it will knock them down, 3 or 4, maybe 5 times, and then, the 6th time that they get up, they're able to shoot you. And how are you going to deal with that mob if you haven't killed them, or you don't have enough energy to do flash accelerant and then pump them full of your dot damage? Nothing's going to work. So be very cautious of this build. And I would not recommend taking it into in-game content, although the damage is impressive enough that it can handle in-game content. Now, the best weapons that I've seen to use with this particular type of setup is the Pox, which you can check out the build for in the Saren God builds, and then the newly designed Acrid. I know I covered Acrid whenever we did the Frost Prime God builds, but I'm touching down on it here because I've added primed heated charge, and I think that might be the only thing that's different. You really want to have a high status chance of at least 50%, that way when you do your flash accelerant it increases the dot damage. I think the Pox is probably going to outperform it, but I'm using Acrid primarily to show you the difference in builds that I used. I'm also using Atarax just because I like to capitalize on the spin attack. I am not at all using Naramon because energy is, like I said, an issue, and you have to keep generic at all times with a build as powerful as this one. Now, when it comes to Sentinels, like I alluded to earlier, I'm using the Prisma Shade, because in those instances when I have lost too much energy, I'm going to throw down a couple of energy restores. I'm going to rely on Prisma Shade to cloak me, and I'm going to try to get my energy back up so I can continue on with the fight. That is the best way that this build is going to work and do the damage that you guys want it to do. So, in essence, Ember does need somewhat of a rework. She needs some form of damage mitigation because it's just not there. She gets squished, and it's really not fair to people who play with Ember, and I realize that the initial God build that I did for her wasn't really fair to people who want to play Ember in that way, and I wholeheartedly agree. But when I make builds like that, I do it to be versatile. I do it to combat every situation that the game can possibly throw at me. And I felt that with Ember, you could not combat every single situation with the strength build, and I still feel that way. So if you use this build, just keep in mind that I'm not giving it my seal of approval. I'm specifically giving it to you because you want to do damage, and I commend you for wanting to do that damage. Just be sure to gripe to the developers, that way we can push for an Ember buff, and she can be put into the spotlight she wholeheartedly belongs in. So if you like this video, do as I always tell you guys to do. Like, comment, share, subscribe, join the Facebook fan page. And until next time, this has been Vance, signing off. Peace.